name is Shanna Corbin. I'm an occupational hand therapist at an outpatient hand therapy clinic. And every day I work with people to help them regain motion, strength, and function following a debilitating injury or surgery to their shoulder, elbow, wrist, or hand. As part of that process, I often work with people to help them find simple solutions so that they can independently complete most daily activities with the other non-injured arm during the rehab process. Of the patients I work with, the most commonly reported difficulty that people have is with cutting food, which typically requires two hands, one to stabilize and the other to cut. Normally, I recommend a variety of adaptive equipment such as one-handed cutting boards with guards, clamps, hooks, or spikes to stabilize the food, or modified cutting instruments such as rocker knives. Adaptive equipment is particularly beneficial for those with longer-term deficits. But what if you simply need a short-term solution to help you function in the kitchen with one arm and don't have the money to invest or don't want to invest in separate kitchen gadgets to get the job done? Recently, I underwent elbow surgery, and I have a whole new respect for the patients I work with and a whole new understanding of how difficult operating with one arm truly is. For those patients, or for anyone who has had a recent arm injury, I've taken on the challenge of cutting an assortment of vegetables and fruits with one arm while not having any adapted or fancy equipment. So today, I'd like to share with you a few tips that I've learned to make one-handed food preparation a little more possible. All that you need is a few simple objects that you might have laying around your house. Some of the objects that I've used, and I'll show you how to use, are paper clips, which I've actually taken an assortment of paper clips and just kind of undone them a little bit, just untwist them, which is pretty easy with one hand. Rubber bands. I've used the type of rubber bands that you wrap around produce. Corn on the cob holders, those are useful. Cork board. You can get the type of cork board that they have at, they sell at office supply places, or what I've found around the house is a thicker type of cork board that is actually used as a hot pad underneath of a pan or a pot, and a rubbery jar bottle opener. And then, of course, you need knives and your cutting boards. So let's get started. The first thing I'm going to cut is asparagus, which I've actually already laid here. I've started with a cutting board and I wrapped around two thick rubber bands around the cutting board, which was pretty simple to do with one hand, just took a little bit of handiwork. And then I've taken some asparagus that I've already washed and prepared, of course, and I stuck it underneath of the rubber band so that both ends are supported and stabilized. And then what I'm going to do in order to chop this asparagus is, first of all, it's easiest if you push the asparagus up away from you so that it's nice and secure and tightened within the rubber band. If it's right in the middle, it tends to sometimes move a little bit more, so push it up along the corners of the board. Away from you is always best. Take a thick knife. Now, I typically may not use this type of knife to cut vegetables. However, the wider the knife like this, the more easily you can use more of a rocking type of motion, which really allows you to use one hand more easily. So I would suggest kind of a butcher knife like this, or a knife kind of like this one as well. So I'm going to use this knife right here, and I'm just going to make a little chop. So we're just going to go down the line here. So I'm just going to make it little chops into little pieces, just like so. And if you kind of rock with your knife, it makes it a lot more easy to chop it into little sections, just like so. So what I like to do is I usually like to put this type of smaller chopped asparagus in in a pasta dish or even salad sometimes. You can cut it finer if you want, but that's just a nice simple way. So then you can take it, clean it, and put it in whatever you're going to be making. So the second thing we're going to be chopping is a carrot. We're going to use the same type of method that we did with the asparagus. I'm going to grab my carrot here and I'm going to simply place it or prop it underneath of these little rubber band pieces, preferably with the ends holding them. Pick up the rubber band and snap it over just like so. You can pull the rubber band away, or you can pull the ends closer, whatever works for you. Sometimes I find it's a little bit easier to have, you know, the rubber bands more near the end so that you have more center to work with. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to chop the edges, which is what I typically like to chop first with carrots. Now, I haven't actually shaved this carrot, so I'm going to show you a little technique to shave it first, and then we're going to go back to this chopping actually. So for shaving the carrot, sometimes what I found is to take your cork board, place it on the cutting board, and we're going to take the jar lid opener and place that underneath the cork board first, just to stabilize it, keep it from moving. And for extra stability, we're going to place the rubber band right on over top on each side of the cork board, just like so. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my paper clip, and you can take a large one, small one, doesn't really matter, it's up to you. I'm going to turn the cutting board vertically, just it's a little bit easier for me because then you can kind of peel away from you or shave it away from you. So we're going to place the carrot in underneath the rubber band by the ends, just like we did before. Okay. Now this is pretty stable, however, it still kind of moves a little bit whenever you actually shave it. So for a little extra stability, what I like to do is just take the paper clip, and we're going to take a small one here, and I'm just going to secure it just like so. I'm just going to push it right through and just kind of wrap it around the carrot, basically, as if it's a little clamp. So we're going to push it down, wrap it around. You could do just the one, or you could do another one at the end for even extra stability. It's up to you. If you do another one, you could take the second one and put it down here. There we go, just for a little extra stability. Push it down through the cork board. For the larger end of the carrot, you might want to use the larger paper clip. Kind of wrap around a little bit more easily. Just like so. Okay. Then what we're going to do is just shave it. Now the nice thing about this is you can still rotate your carrot within the paper clip and the rubber band as you shave. So we're going to carefully shave all the ends, just like so. I'm kind of come close to you, rotating and shaving. Okay, so I have it mostly shaved for what I like. Sometimes I like to leave a little bit of the unshaved part on is okay with me. So let me take it out. Have my shaved carrot. I'm going to Get rid of the cork board for now. We'll come back to that. Get rid of the pot holder for now. We're going to go back to the horizontal placement of the cutting board. I'm going to place it back underneath of my rubber band. And then we can simply chop the carrot and make little chops, just like that. So a rocking action with the knife typically works best to make little chunks. Now this is not a fancy way to cut your carrot. If you want to do it a little bit fancier, you certainly could experiment with that. And if you have any tips for me on how to do fancy cutting, I'm open. But for now, we're going to chop it down the line. I like to chop it like this for soups. Okay, so I'm going to add this to my soup, and we're going to go and chop a strawberry next. Now let's say you want to cut the stems off strawberries or cut any other type of bite-sized fruit or vegetable, like let's say grapes, something like that. I found the quickest way to do it is to do it in bulk. And one way to do that is to take your paper clip, or as a bonus, if you happen to have one of these laying around the house, even better, you can take a skewer, a food skewer. I like it, it's a little bit longer than a paper clip, but either way, what you do is you turn your cutting board longitudinally and secure the skewer or the end of a paper clip underneath the rubber band, preferably the rubber band that's closest to you. You would take your berry or fruit or whatever it is. I'm going to take strawberries here, and I'm simply going to push them onto the skewer, just right down the center, just like so. So we're going to take several of them, pushing them down. Nice and easy. I like at least a bowl full of strawberries when I do eat them. Okay, I'll do one more here. Perfect. I'm going to take the other end then and secure it underneath the rubber band, the top end that I was just handling, so that it's secured to the board like that. And I'm going to face all of the strawberries in one direction so that I can just take all of the stems off at once. And then take my knife and then just kind of go down the line and cut all the stems off. You could cut them all at once, or you could cut them individually. It's up to you. Okay. Occasionally you'll have one that'll roll. That's okay. And then you could also cut the strawberries as well if you wanted to slice them. But for me, I just like to cut the stems off nice and easy, just like that. Then you just undo your rubber band piece, and then it's kind of nice and easy, because then you could just dump this right into the bowl that you're going to eat the strawberries with. So that's your strawberries. Alternatively, to cut strawberries or any other type of small fruit or vegetable, you could take your cork board like this, secure it on the rubber gripper on the cutting board, and you could simply do them individually and use your corn on the cob holder and stab the strawberry or other berry just like so, and then cut it individually. That's also an option. I like to kind of do it in the bulk method, but it's up to you. Another fruit that I love to eat and cut and actually have with peanut butter is an apple. However, how the heck do you cut one of these with one hand? And I don't know about you, but I'm not too much of just a simple apple eater. So I love to chop my apples. So the best way that I found to do this with one hand was to place my rubber gripper on a cutting board, like such. If you're fortunate enough to have one of these apple slicers, this definitely helps. What I like to do is actually use this to secure the apple and to kind of cut it. So I'm going to place it on the rubber gripper. Then I'm going to take my apple and I'm going to actually push my apple down using my good arm. You have to put a little elbow grease into it, but push your apple down and then it's nice and secure. And then you can actually use that then to make your cuts. And again, you want to use that same rocking type of motion as you do. You might even have to rotate the cutting board so that things don't roll away for you. I'm going to cut it in a couple slices here. I kind of like my slices. And then you have your apple, so you can dip in peanut butter or whatever else you like it with. The next thing is if you like to cut lemons or oranges or any other type of rounder, firmer fruit. I'll show you a little technique for that. It's similar to how we've been cutting the other vegetables and fruits actually, and we're going to go back to those rubber bands, just like so. Grab my lemon, put it underneath the rubber band to secure it. Use my rocking action with my larger knife. Then, of course, we're going to place the cut that's been made. The flat surface is going to go downwards so that it's already stable, and then you can cut wedges from there. So lemons and oranges and things like that can be cut in this fashion fairly easily, as long as you stabilize it first with your rubber band or some kind of mechanism. It makes it a lot easier then to flip it around on the flat side and then cut wedges from there. Lastly, we're going to cut the almighty tough avocado. So be careful with avocados. Working in a hand therapy clinic, I see a lot of patients who have injuries after cutting avocados, and it has a lot to do with the pits in the center and the fact that they roll around. So for your avocado cutting, if you're going to try to attempt that with one hand, be careful. You want to definitely err on the side of security with that one. With an avocado, what you're going to do is take your rubber bands, secure your cork board underneath the rubber bands on both sides. Make sure that it's really stabilized, along with your rubber jar gripper underneath for extra security. In the avocado, what I've done here is you can either take paper clips, or what I really like just for a little bit more stability is skewers. You basically stab your avocado on each side of the pit. You don't want to go right through the center, or else you're going to run into the pit of the avocado. You want to go on the side here and push it all the way down into the cork board, push, and then your separate one on the other side of the pit. Then what you can do from there then is you take your knife and you cut directly down the center once everything's stabilized. Now, you don't want to just push through the center, or else that's actually how people kind of roll off the pit and then end up injuring themselves. Even though this is stable, we just don't want to do that. What you do though is you just kind of make a cut until you feel the little pit, which is kind of hard, and then you can kind of roll down with your knife and cut the rest of it. And you can just kind of follow the soft edges. Cut the soft, fleshy parts of the avocado with your knife. You can kind of feel that, and just kind of slowly doing it so that you are not risking injury. The other thing then, what you do with your knife is you basically, a nice big knife like this kind of works, because then you can kind of have your knife in the center, and you basically do a little shimmy where you rotate the knife to help push the edges of the avocado away, because it's really that suction action of the pit that really makes it hard to separate the two pieces of the avocado. So I'm just going to use my knife basically to shimmy it a little bit and separate the two parts of the avocado. Once it's separated, it's pretty easy from there. Then we have our pit. You can take out your skewers. And once you have your two halves, you should be able to, a ripe avocado, you should be able to open it pretty easily and then take your pit out. Mine already fell out and rolled. So then once you have your halves, much like you would cut a lemon or an orange, which I showed you earlier, once you have the half, you can put the flat surface down for stability and then just simply make a cut if you would like to cut it into quarters. So I hope you learned a few things and a couple cutting techniques that I've learned on how to make good, healthy food in the kitchen with one hand. It is more difficult than having two, but certainly it's definitely possible. And if you have any tips for me, I'd love to hear it. Thank you so much. Hope you've learned a few things. Thanks.